Hello and welcome, episode 53 of the Senteon and CIS webinar series. My co-host Rich McGraw has been text MIA. Hopefully he pops in at some point today. Otherwise, we are joined by Ray Feldman, the Strategic Alliance President Partner of LastPass. You are the guy to talk to for partnerships. So thank you for joining me today, man. Really excited to get into some of these password settings, and a lot of SmartScreen will be talked about today. So today's episode is going to be a little special because we're going to kick off with a little bit of synergy talk, right? How do vendors work together? Specifically, Senteon and LastPass, right? This synergy topic is just growing in need and necessity, and integrate this, integrate that. What is the outcome we're all striving for? So really excited to get into a little bit of the business perspective with you today, Ray. So before we get into that, per usual, let's do a little housekeeping. If we can toss my screen on, we have some webinars coming up. We just finished up Can IT Con. It was an absolute blast. Thank you to those hosts there. We were glad to be a sponsor. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing a webinar with Kevin Dutkowitz. I always struggle with Kevin's last name. And we're going to be talking about his transition from starting at help desk, moving to director, and now launching his own business. What are the challenges, and how does that look from his perspective? So really excited to see what he's doing over with Tech Brews. My next event will be CornCon. I'll be out there as a speaker. I'm really excited to kind of dive into a lot of the settings we talk about here. So CornCon's coming in October. Extremely excited to be there with some of our friends. And again, Senteon here. You can catch all of our webinars. They're embedded to our website. You can watch them here. I do the CIS Benchmarks series weekly, and I do some various topics like the one tomorrow and the one last week with Jared Brantley on automation, parallel to the series, right? So we're covering both aspects of technical and more business high value. And Senteon, again, is a single platform that can harden workstations, servers, and browsers. And we take all of the CIS recommendations you can see here, and we actually crosswalk them across the other frameworks you might care about a little bit more. And you can click into any of these, see what it is, and of course, how it maps into the relevant frameworks. So all of this right here is our free offering, freemium right here. And if you want it to go the next step, you can also run assessments to see what you're missing, where you can improve, and provide a roadmap for yourself. And if you did want to use the full Senteon experience, we are a remediation platform. So you are able to start here and get to here in minutes. So that's the housekeeping for today. Let's get into the episode. Right. Ray, LastPass, you're just a password manager, right? Nothing else, right? That's it, right? Who's Ray? Tell us the full story of what LastPass is up to lately.
Yeah, of course. So I started my LastPass journey, oh, wow, maybe about 5 months ago. So I'm still pretty new here at LastPass. But yeah, I manage all things technical alliances, specifically cloud marketplaces, any integration vendors. We're obviously, beloved by many SIMs and EDR and XDR platforms out there who love to see where users are logging in from, and all the failed passwords attempts from bots and all that sort of fun stuff. So but yeah, LastPass, enterprise password management solution. Not often you see tools that are both convenient for a user and secure, but that's what we aim to be, as our chief secure technology officer likes to say. So awesome. Yeah, happy to be here, man, and glad you're back. You've been kind of everywhere.
Shows are nonstop in this market. And speaking of the market with MSPs, when I think LastPass, I typically do immediately think enterprise password security manager, right? But I was over at Can IT Con, and LastPass had a booth. I'm seeing LastPass booth at ChannelCon, at a lot of MSP events. Could you maybe share a little high level, who is LastPass serving?
Yeah, one of the things that really drew me to LastPass was just how universal we are across the board, right? Like, we can be implemented at a 5-person company, a 5,000-person company. Like I previously mentioned, all the hyperscalers really like working with us, AWS, Microsoft, a lot of different other ISVs and tech partners. Even us, we have a really nice Better Together story, right? How we're helping customers achieve a very foundational element of security, which is configuring and hardening settings and then managing your credentials, right? You can't get much more bread and butter than that. But from an MSP standpoint, we've got a large group of MSPs that we serve as well, and it's a big focus for us. So
That's awesome to hear. And I know the MSP market needs it. There's a massive, I think, just general push across all markets. But this concept, when you say foundational, it is truly, hey, I have an asset, right? Once you know you have the asset, configuring the asset, right? That is the most foundation of foundation, right? It goes a little beyond that, right? You got to have access management and maybe some whitelisting, blacklisting. Like there's a lot to hardening and foundational security. But at the scope of configurations and scope of password manager, for configs itself, you don't even need a third-party platform. Of course, Senteon makes it easier, but these are things you can do at only the cost of labor, right? A password manager like LastPass, right? That you're going to need a platform to do something like that. But there's aspects of security and foundational frameworks that you can do today. So really, really good intro there. Wanted to make sure it was known that LastPass is serving the MSP community because that is a lot of where I live, right? So very, very awesome. Thank you for that. So today's episode, like I shared, we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to dive into this synergy. So if we can pop up the first slide here. Ray, before we dive into the specifics of Senteon LastPass synergy, why is vendor synergy kind of a topic today? Why did LastPass invest in you to lead strategic partnerships? Why would they do that?
I think having a strong ecosystem of partners, not only from the vendor perspective, whether it's go-to-market efforts or what else, it's a big customer advantage, right? Having that strong ecosystem allows you to approach cybersecurity the way that you would want to as a practitioner from a holistic point of view, right? Again, I always fall back on like what's foundational, what's the bread and butter of cybersecurity. What are the things you should be doing? Back at my time at CIS, that's one of the things I loved about there is we were a very easy to implement framework, globally renowned. It was all the things that you should be doing to bootstrap. And to your point, cost of labor, right? Scanning, remediating, doing all the wrench turning to secure your organization. So that's what customers want. They want tools that play together nicely. They want a holistic approach to cybersecurity, and that's kind of what we're aiming to be here.
And I love that you use the word practitioner perspective, right? Getting everything to get aligned, and maybe it's a single report, maybe it's the imaginary single pane of glass, but getting everything viewed together in an easy enough a way so that you can have that practitioner perspective while you're busy with 100 other things as an MSP owner, as a small IT team at an enterprise, knowing your security posture, knowing your fundamental gaps and which platform fills what, like that's immensely value. So kudos to LastPass investing in you, and kudos to you wanting to make things easier, right? That matters.
Big time.
And you mentioned one thing I think I forgot to give a shout out because I forgot myself. You come from CIS, is that right?
Yeah, I was at CIS for a few years, started back in 2019, right shortly before the era of COVID, right? And yeah, I loved every minute at CIS. Great organization. What they're doing for really the globe when it comes to managing a security community and building out all their content and recommendations. I love it. So it was a great time at CIS.
Yeah, they've been really fun to work with, and they are very much advocating for the MSP community and building out their frameworks with the MSP in mind nowadays. So very excited and cool to hear you're still aligning your future endeavors with CIS.
Always.
So let's dive into that synergy. Let's pull up slide 1 here. So we have Senteon here, we have LastPass here, we're supposed to have CIS here. Rich might join later, but Rich is here in spirit. So talk to us a little bit. LastPass, we talked about password manager. We know we have the controls. We know we have CIS benchmarks, which is what this is about. But how is LastPass aligning to CIS at a high level? And then we'll go a little bit in depth into it.
Yeah, I think, from a policy standpoint, right? Like LastPass, we're pretty well known for having a very robust set of admin policies. I think there's over 130 of them now, but everything from managing access control to user behavior, what you should be doing around MFA, again, kind of what you mentioned before, where and what from should you be logging in? All those things, again, fall back to a foundational element of cybersecurity that I think no one creates better than CIS, right? So
Yeah.
it could be something as simple as, hey, thou shall have this length of password, or it should be this complex. It should have these special characters, whatever. Aligning to CIS is always a smart way to go.
I think every CIS benchmark starts with ensure. I think it should start with thou are too. I think that was a much better way of saying it.
Yep.
But that's a big thing to emphasize here as well. CIS, and it's our chosen framework. Maybe you'll echo this, but it's our chosen framework at Senteon because it's not saying you need to complete this outcome. It is saying, hey, you need to do this to that to achieve this, right? It's a defensible path of security, right? If an incident happens and God forbid I ever end up in the court of law or I need to defend why I made decisions, it's not me saying, hey, Senteon told me to do this or my gut told me to do this. It's CIS, this globally recognized organization, told me to do this, or LastPass told me to do this because it meets this CIS requirement, right? This concept of defensibility. Maybe you can expand on that a little bit, Ray. What does defensibility mean to you guys?
I mean, to me, it's really achieving a robust security posture, right? Like foundational elements of cybersecurity are baked really well into CIS and even some other compliance frameworks out there. But it's really, to me, that's just a baseline.
Mhm.
Understanding your risk and attack surface specifically as an organization, and really getting into what's the minimum level of effort we need to complete in order to actually be secure. Not even just compliant, because again, that's to me a baseline
Yep.
and foundational, right? You need to build on that, but understanding what your risks are, running assessments, really doing the, kind of behind the scenes almost work that platforms and tools don't accomplish sometimes.
Yep.
Building out your own policies, right, and procedures. Yeah, robust security posture is what defensible means to me. It's you've got
Nice.
documented things in place,
Yep.
showing, to your point, if you ever ended up on the other side, and you had to explain why the B word happened, which is a legal term, by the way. We don't use that here as
Right.
security guys. You want to have that. You want to have that defensible position.
It very much is a legal word. So I've learned never to say that, right? It's an potential incident, right? That's a big thing. And a thing you also mentioned, right? Senteon's focusing on the CIS benchmark, the explicit CIS settings. LastPass, and you hinted on this in your introduction, you have additional policies that maybe go wider than the scope of just the benchmarks, right? I think you said the number 130 policies, right? These policies may not be explicit CIS settings, but they're policies that you guys have determined and identified this fits into CIS here because of this, right? Tell us more about this policy aspect of LastPass, because that sounds like a lot more than just a password manager.
Yeah, it really is. It's a great audit tool, right? Like what we're able to kind of provide for teams, who are administrating the platform and really managing it at an organization. I mean, very detailed audit logs and reporting capabilities. In order, we could tell you, again, where people are logging in from, what devices, IPs. We've even got baked into that a view at like the password strength of a vault and things like that. So
Nice.
it goes pretty granular and allows you as an admin to kind of see from a dashboard, what's the lay of the land here, like who's reusing the same password 19 times, and who needs to get some emails and some talking to. It
More
again,
accountability, it sounds like, because
yeah,
Senteon can change a policy to force them to do something. But if that organization isn't being forced, being able to identify that it's not happening, I mean, that's huge value.
big time mandating these sort of things at the end user level is extremely valuable.
That's awesome to hear. So let's take this a step higher level. I have a better understanding of LastPass and how Senteon work together now, but higher level of securing the browser. This is, I feel, being talked about more and more. I mean, we've had the browser for more than a decade. I mean, more than 2 decades, honestly. Like, why is browser security now becoming the forefront of a lot of conversations? Any trends you can talk about?
Well, I can tell you that at LastPass, we see a lot of organizations using the browsers to store passwords, right? And I mean, come on, it's so easy. You type something in, and it can't pop up fast enough to say yes, save this here. I mean, and it's not even just passwords, right? It's other information that it's taking. Could be addresses,
Payment information, right? Some of the
financial
settings we talk
information. Yeah.
about are payment queries, location queries, autofill, right? Those are the settings that we talk about in this series, and they are all available by default. You have to take the initiative as a business to either say, well, you should take that not configured to explicitly allow, which probably shouldn't, but explicitly not allow if you can get that barrier of might be a little usability impactful, right? A little bit of complaints, but if you can overcome that, the security value is immense. But to your point with the trends, it sounds like usability has just been prioritized so much.
And what's funny is it's not even really convenient, right? Like storing passwords in a browser, it's not cross-platform, right? What you have stored in Edge isn't stored in, Chrome or Safari, or hopefully you're using DuckDuckGo or something like that. Quick shout out to them. It's not encrypted. It can't be audited. It's not convenient at the end of the day, right? Because you can't easily share these passwords either. So I almost want to say you might as well just use a sticky note, and if you're storing passwords in the browser, pray that your network isn't flat and that you don't have someone lurking, because you'll be in trouble.
I think that's a good point though on the usability, because to your just that, so me and my wife, we do have our own separate password managers, and we add the ones we need to have joint access to. But I recently learned, and I don't know if every two-factor is like this, maybe it is, but we can have both of our accounts have the same account, right? These are accounts that we share. They're joint accounts with the same credentials, but we can both set up MFA, and the MFA code is actually the same on both of our apps, and we can both access it. I didn't know that was possible, because she used to always text me, hey, I need the Authy for this, and I need the Authy for that. And now it's on our own interfaces, and we both have separate 2FAs. I don't know if that was really relevant, but I was super impressed, and I wanted to share it live on the webinar.
Yeah. Interesting when sometimes that's at the device level too, right? So I guess maybe it depends on the authenticator that you're using, but
There you go.
super interesting for sure.
Yeah. So browsers are definitely becoming more top of mind. There's best practices in CIS and LastPass. Senteon's a good medium to do that. Any other takeaways you want to share on just synergies of vendors working together? Anything more you want to share on this before we keep on moving?
I guess just one other thing that a trend I'm seeing, and I can maybe guess less of a trend, but more of like I don't know, just kind of where people want things to go, is everything. Everyone wants everything to be web based, right? When it comes to certain applications and things like that. I just did a brief stint handling metaverse technology, and the browser based and web based technologies were really able to scale and do really awesome. So just web-based is being more and more predominant. So
it's awesome. And let's hop over to this next slide. So this is going to be more specifically on LastPass, right? And one thing we maybe looked past in the last one, especially talking about trends, is this aspect of compliance. So introduce this slide, but if you don't mind, highlight compliance really quick, and where browsers maybe sit in compliance, how LastPass helps, anything you can share on that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think when it comes to different frameworks, whether it's CIS recommendations or NIST has some articles around passwords too. It's important to have more control over it. And to me, when you have a dedicated solution, and whether it's LastPass or not, right? If you're using a dedicated, secure, platform to not only store but generate and share passwords, you're going to use secure channels. You're going to be able to follow the different mappings that you need to be doing. You're going to be able to create a more defensible position, right? Going back to that, rather than if you're emailing stuff or you're doing something other, that could be compromising you. So yeah, it's just you're going to tick a lot of boxes using a platform like LastPass.
Yep, and that goes towards this slide, right? And without even putting the direct mappings on here, I know you have those because we talked about it offline, but data protection, control 3, account management, control 5. I think control 5 is also access control. I think they combine it, but you are taking the time at LastPass to show how you align to this best practice framework. Senteon does the same thing, because this is how our MSP partners, our enterprise friends, this is how they can visualize, okay, here's where this vendor fits, here's where this one fits, here's a gap, right?
Yeah.
Aligning, taking the time as a vendor, as LastPass, as Senteon to say, we fit here, not here, here, not here, is helpful for everybody, right? So dive into some of these. Why, you already mapped to CIS controls. You already mentioned kind of the importance of that, but tell us a little bit more on the specific points outlined here.
So a couple things I want to share too. Quick shout out to our team over at LastPass. So a couple different teams. So one, we did just launch a blog. I mean, really like a week ago. I think perfect timing for this. On kind of how we align to CIS. Definitely go on our website, check that out. But we've also recently stood up. I think they've been around for about a year now. A threat intelligence team. We call them the Time Team. Threat intelligence mitigation. I believe exploitation is the E. I screw it up sometimes, but just quite frankly, just a really, really awesome team of security experts from all over the industry, coming from banks and the government, and so they're really taking a really hard look at all these different things because, to your point, yes, like companies, MSPs, other partners, they want to know, how are you aligning, how are you mapping, how are you helping companies achieve certain things. AWS, they have a whole program around authority to operate, right, which CIS is a part of with their hardened images.
Yep.
Okay, so it's becoming more and more prevalent, and I hoping and believing that companies are seeing that as like, okay, here's the first step is aligning with CIS, and how do I springboard from there to a more mature security posture. But
yep, and I did link that blog straight into the event page, so definitely check out the LastPass blog because it is filled with that documentation that we need to truly bring this front mind and talking about.
Yeah.
So it's cool that you have this outlined in the CIS controls right here on the slide for everyone. Let's talk about a little bit of the accountability aspect. I see audit and reporting there, right? Having these controls in place is one thing, right? I know they're in place, but being able to prove they're in place, what's the difference and why is that important?
I mean, so many different frameworks call for, that documentation, right? But I think, again, using a framework or a compliance, using that as a springboard into a more mature state, right? Like, how are you then taking those audit logs and reporting and putting those into actionable capabilities, building alerts, basing certain policies and procedures off of those, everything all the way up to tabletopping your incident response plan, right? How are you leveraging in that way? But again, you have to have them. The auditors are a big piece of compliance, and they want to come in and they want to rip everything apart and for good reason and take a look under the hood.
Yep, absolutely. And the point about access control, right? I mean, I imagine you're talking about LastPass, of course, has MFA in place, right? They have that availability there. Is there more to, this is me just not knowing all the functionality of LastPass. Is there more to MFA than just like enabling in LastPass? Is there like MFA to get on the browser? Is there like, does it go beyond that? Or are we talking about LastPass specifically with that point?
Definitely specifically, but a couple cool things on the LastPass side. So obviously we have our own authenticator, but from a single sign-on perspective too, we're the only one that offers it natively to where you don't have to worry about an SSO tax through an IDP or anything like that. And we also allow users to use like an Okta or a Ping identity to actually federate back into their LastPass vault. So
Very
some
cool.
cool things, yes. Kind of to your point, like, oh, you're just a password manager. Not. You do a lot
That's
of this stuff.
exactly what I want to make sure we emphasize here because I work with, like I said, I've said this a few times, a lot of MSPs and LastPass comes up constantly, but I don't feel like it's completely understood. I mean, I was at Can ITCon and I learned way more than I intended to from talking to your colleague, right? There's more to it than just that aspect.
Big time. Yeah, and we're quite frankly doing a better job of being more consistent in the market, kind of coming out of this cocoon as our own standalone cybersecurity company and really being a force in the industry, being a community partner, again, working with like-minded companies like Senteon who are like doing real good in the industry, and truly helping organizations reach that defensible position.
It's awesome. Well, I think we're at the point with the last 30 minutes here to start diving into some of these specific policies. And to emphasize again, LastPass has their own security policies that they can put in place on top or in addition to. The scope of these settings we're talking about here are specific to the CIS benchmarks and educating how they may play nicely into LastPass, play nicely into the overarching security posture. So this first setting here is probably the most asked for setting. Senteon, please be able to do this. Like, enable saving passwords to the browser is set to disabled. So this on Microsoft Edge is saying don't use the built-in password manager. Right. I mean, you're going to have plenty to say on this, but does this defeat the purpose of LastPass if they still have this available?
Certainly not, right? For a couple of the things that we discussed before, and I mean, I would love to talk to some of those customers and MSPs of yours who are championing disabling this, in the different browsers. But again, it's not cross-platform, it's not convenient, certainly
Yep.
not secure. It's again,
And I don't know how deep you can go with this, but why is it not secure on the built-in browser?
again, I mean, imagine someone's got access to your network, right? Now they're in and they're behind the scenes and behind those walls, right? That's all ripe for the taking. It doesn't follow the same encryption standards that, a company like LastPass or other, robust dedicated password managers, quite frankly, use and are accelerating on more and more. But unauthorized access, again, go back to being a security practitioner, assume you're compromised, right? You better not have, you would hate to see what other things are tracked, in the web browser. You definitely don't want to put credentials in there.
Yep. And it's crazy to me, and to kind of talk about the layout of the slides for this series that I do, we have the CIS control mapping in the bottom left. CIS does provide those explicitly in the CIS benchmarks, but we're also going to see something in the bottom right called level 1. I would actually argue a little bit with CIS on this one, but this is a level 1 setting because it should not be disruptive. It should be a basic security hygiene decision that every business should do. That is a level 1 setting. CIS does say this is a level 1 setting. I can see a lot of end clients pushing back on this and it being pretty disruptive. So I might consider this, a level 1 plus, right? A little bit tougher to get the end client to want to allow this.
Sure.
But again, this goes into the sales process, right? If you say, hey, we need to do this because of this, no, don't panic. I'm not saying you need to memorize all 500 passwords. We're going to be giving you this because, right? So to that point, Ray, I just wanted to call out, this is something every business should do. CIS thinks it's a level 1. Have a LastPass, at minimum, any type of password manager, but LastPass is definitely leading the charge with this documentation attestability point of view.
Yeah, it's table stakes, right? Like don't put them in there. You don't want them stored locally. Just
I don't know if you're, and again, I know you're on the partnership side. Have you talked to an enterprise or an MSP yourself or heard stories of, reasons they may not want you to disable the built-in browser? Is there like a pushback of using a password manager? Is that a challenge you've dealt with or heard about?
I mean, so I, personally haven't had, the pleasure to speak with many customers, right? But I do get to interact with a lot of customer-facing teams here at LastPass, and I can tell you that a lot of customers, they want to do something, right? They want to lean on browser, built-in browser password manager as a bit of a crutch, right? They almost see it as better than nothing, but I think as we've kind of pointed out, it kind of increases your attack surface in a way, right? Like, are you truly better maybe just writing that thing down in a notebook and then putting it in a locked filing cabinet? I mean, half the people that come across that won't even be able to read your handwriting, maybe. Who knows? So we definitely see that as folks who think that it's a better than nothing solution, and it arguably is it though? Right?
Yeah, arguably isn't. And I do want to call out the did you know here because it sounds like one of those 130 policies you have, you can actually disable this for them, right? You don't even need to manually do it. You don't even need Senteon in this scenario because this is one of those policies LastPass can manage. That's awesome.
Yeah, right, built into our product. So our product's smart enough to know, like, hey, we're not gonna paste, plain text passwords into the browser. Like, we're not gonna allow you to save them there, for these applications or whatever. So
Yep. Awesome. Let's go ahead and dive into the next setting here. A setting of, we're talking about passwords and SmartScreen today, but here's one. Enable startup boost is set to disabled. When I first read this, I was a little confused, but I was like, does this mean like making sure things don't boot up too quickly? Like, is that really all this is saying? Like, does it, because then if it boots on too fast, it skips certain security layers? Like, I didn't really understand this out of the gate. But that kind of turns out a little bit of research behind it. It kind of sounds like that's exactly what it was doing, making sure things don't stay running or boot on too fast and skip security layers. Is this a setting you have any additional comments on right here?
yeah, I mean, you definitely don't want unnecessary or non-critical systems and programs taking a drag on any of the much more critical security focused ones, right? And to me, it's almost like, I don't want to put on a tinfoil hat or anything, but if you've got random programs running amok or constantly running, or could just be places to hide, right?
Yep. Yep.
So
It's preventing those background processes from starting too quickly, right? If the background process starts before the security process, the heck was the point of the security, right?
yeah,
It's making sure things are starting in the right order, not trying to use resources. I know that's one thing that's talked about a little bit is how do I make sure my computer has enough resources, the battery's dying too fast. Like these are settings that are not only going to make you more operationally more efficient, but resource optimized and so forth. So this is a good setting to still just mention, even though it's probably not talked about that much.
and we don't want security to get blamed for poor performance either, right? Like, we don't want our programs to be, the ones that are shut off or delayed or anything like that, because someone's battery is draining too fast or something's running too
Yep.
slow. A good friend of mine, her name's Holly. She owns a company, Voice and Code. Check her out on LinkedIn. She's got an awesome series on the user experience behind
Ooh.
just security, right? Human-centered security. And
You'll have
she
to link that one after the show. I haven't heard of her.
she's your next guest, I think. She's awesome. You guys would definitely have a lot of synergy. But yeah, I mean, the user experience behind this, right? Like, we don't want that to take a hit either, and don't want security to come into the spotlight as to potentially why that's happening.
Yep. All right, let's do this next setting here. I think we're making great pace. I think we only have about 10 settings today, so we're doing very good. But this one here specifies whether to allow websites to make requests to more private network endpoints is set to disabled. This is screaming to me that my computer that I'm on, that's my profile, now wants to communicate with other endpoints, maybe in the enterprise, but still other endpoints. Sounds like if a bad actor has access to this setting, one point of compromise becomes the whole business.
Yeah.
Is that what this is saying?
That might be something that someone nefarious could turn on if they were, in behind the scenes trying to, further advance their access, right? But, uh, you know, kind of going back to my CIS days, we had a lot of policies in place. I mean, there's people there who, probably have top secret security clearance, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's like, hey, I don't want that certain level of clearance and authorization there. It's really a matter of, like, again, what is like the least privilege here at LastPass? We operate a lot of things on a zero trust model.
Sure.
We don't know your master password, right? Like all that sort of stuff. So that is kind of my default, and trying to find the balance between how can we totally cut off the access and be as secure and limited as possible, but you need to find the right balance to experience with the user, not overcomplicating things or overextending your resources, right? It's like, what are the minimum things I need to do to be secure at my organization? But this seems like one of those that you want to clamp down on pretty good.
And it would, and there, I'm sure, I'm sure there's people who could come on the show and argue like, oh, it saves me 10 minutes a day if I don't have to go walk over and sign into that other machine, right? There are operational use cases for this, but at one point our off-air conversation, right? Security versus usability, right? What is the risk you're willing to accept? And yeah, I'm with you on this one, right? This is literally basically saying like You can't let websites make secret requests to other devices is what this is reading to me. Like, see anything a secret, secrets are bad in security. Well, I guess encryption. Anyway, that was a bad example. You know what I was saying.
We'll leave it at, you need to be segmenting things properly, and you need to be at least understanding what has access to where and
Mm-hmm.
why. Document it,
Yep.
if there's an exception, right? And then with all else fails, make sure you have that plan to, break glass when needed. So
Yep. All right. The rest of the settings today, if I remember correctly, we're going to be talking about Microsoft Defender. I think specifically SmartScreen, honestly. So Microsoft Defender SmartScreen is set to enabled. So all of the policies that we're going to be closing out the episode with, in order to configure these following episodes, this setting here must be enabled, right? Because if this is not on, then we can't do all of the complementary settings. And that's a big thing I want to emphasize to the listeners who maybe haven't looked at the CIS benchmarks before, maybe haven't configured a browser before, right? There are settings that you have to have in place in order to do the other settings. So this is one of those. This is what in Senteon we call a group setting, because it takes more than just turning on the setting. You have to turn on this setting, then that setting, and so forth, right? So configure Microsoft Defender Smart Screen. So I don't know if you can expand a little bit, but from what I've learned about Microsoft Defender and working with Smart Screen, it's effectively just like an additional layer. Like if you're, at a public park or whatnot, it's having an additional layer of saying, are you allowed to be at that park, right? How much power do you give Defender Smart Screen to double check that things are who they say they are, that people there are supposed to be there and allowed to be there? But is there anything more you want to add on just what Microsoft Defender Smart Screen is at a high level?
I mean, it's a good bouncer, right?
Yeah,
It's
that's a perfect
I mean,
phrase.
hey, do you match the criteria? Are you on, a most wanted list, right? I think,
Yep.
again, and why I really wanted to come on with Senteon, and why I love what you guys in CIS are doing. Again, and this is in LastPass. This
Mhm.
is table stakes, right? I mean, you need to you need to be
Yep.
thinking about these things and doing it. But one other thing that I wanted to throw out there on Defender is that we actually integrate with Microsoft Defender.
Oh,
So yeah, really cool. We've got a push integration with them where we're actually sending them those event and audit logs, like I had mentioned previously. So yeah,
okay.
definitely a big fan of Defender over here, and some of the other Microsoft suite that we
So
integrate
it
with.
sounds like you're able to share some of the data points you're gathering to Defender. Is there any opposite way? Do you guys ingest anything Defender? Is Defender required to be on it to use LastPass, or could you expand a little bit more on that?
No, none of the kind of bidirectional like data ingestion on the LastPass side. The only other thing I guess I'd throw out that's relative to that is we have something with Entra ID as well,
Okay.
where again, companies can federate into their LastPass vault through there. So I think layer, like you said, it's a great word to use here.
Yep.
It's a good foundational element to have put up.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about some of these more granular settings that feed right into Microsoft Defender. So this next one here is Smart Screen. Well, configure Microsoft Defender. Smart Screen to block potentially unwanted apps is set to enabled. So this to me is kind of saying like, hey, I'm trying to download something, but Defender did its scan or it did its, were the certs up to date, and Defender then took the extra step to say, hey, user, this is potentially unwanted. I'm not going to let you, right? A little bit of user disruption or user frustration. But again, this goes back to security usability. Something about the Defender Smart Screen said, this is probably not good. We want to block this, right? Is there anything more you want to add on that one? Is that a good summary on that?
It is a great summary, right? And I think it kind of plays into a little bit of that zero trust model
There you
that
go.
we're familiar with here. I think it's definitely going to help in the world of shadow IT that we also have a big footprint in, right?
Yep.
So really, as SmartScreen saying, hey, you can't download or install this. LastPass is saying, hey, you can't create a login or input your credentials here. Again, I think this is a table stakes. You're reducing the attack surface, and you're taking the issue out of the purview of your end users. Critical.
Yep. Perfect. And the next setting here, again, we'll go a little bit rapid fire, right? We're just talking about this is a whole other layer, and these are the group settings that feed into it. So Microsoft Defender SmartScreen also plays a role with DNS requests, right? Is something broken? It's probably DNS, right? So they do recommend to have this disabled so that Defender SmartScreen can actually block certain DNS requests, right? It's going to make a decision for you, which anything that's making a decision for me on the security perspective can be disruptive, but there's value to it. So with DNS, I can have my friends over at DefenseX come and talk about DNS. I can have a lot of friends. DNS is everywhere. There's a lot of vendors who focus on DNS. But what I will share in addition is you have Microsoft Defender SmartScreen built in. So if you don't have a DNS vendor, you don't know exactly what everything it can do. This is a setting already on the device that you can manage. This is something you can do. And by having this one specifically in place, like I would kind of say like this is if you have a secret and you tell your secret to your friend, let's just making sure your friend then doesn't go share that secret with everyone, right? This is making sure your friend is only sharing the secret with who they can share it with, right? It's that extra layer of are you allowed to be doing that, right? That extra just checks and balance.
Yeah. Don't talk about Fight Club, right? Like keep it
Don't
all
talk about Fight Club.
keep it all in, right? No, I think this is another good one, and this kind of really gets me going on like the synergy and the differences, the complementary nature of security and privacy, however you want to frame it. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's sometimes it's privacy for your own good sort of thing, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And I mean, it goes towards how does Senteon and LastPass work together? How does LastPass and CIS work together, right? These are things that fall a little out of your purview, but if in place, maybe makes LastPass or maybe makes the browser as a whole more secure by foundational security, right? These all feed
right.
into each other. You shouldn't, if you have LastPass, that doesn't mean you turn this off. It doesn't mean you don't need this. It's a layered security approach.
Yeah, and it's exactly how organizations should be thinking. And when we're positioning LastPass or talking about LastPass with our customers and partners, it's again, I think we're really good at talking about a strategic, holistic approach to your cybersecurity program in general, right? Like, yes, we solve what's probably one of the main vectors for
Yeah.
suffering the B word, right? But that certainly doesn't mean you should be caught out of place in another area. So again, it's to your point. Why do customers want these tools that all talk to each other and like have this vibe across each other? Well, this is why, because the attack surface is huge. There's a lot of ways to get in.
And it's hard to know what that attack surface is. All right, this next setting here, force Microsoft Defender Smart Screen checks on downloads from trusted sources. So the key word here that I want to call out is this one force, because the other group settings here don't have that. So effectively the way I want to explain the setting is this is like basically even if I've already identified as a trusted source, we're still going to take the extra 5 seconds of load time, whatever that is, to make sure everything is up to date. There is no compromised files by whatever checks Microsoft Defender Smart Screen does, because without this being forced, if it's already a trusted source, it won't check again. It'll just say, yep, I've already checked it in the past. It's good to go. Things change, things become compromised. People forget to renew their certifications, right? There are things that can happen. And this can be one of those settings where, again, the end client may get frustrated. They may say, this loaded yesterday. Why is it not loading today, right? But this is verifying that things are up to date before you actually download anything that could be malicious.
I mean, think of a scenario where someone is emailed a phishing
Yeah.
email, and within the phishing email there's a file, right? And within that file, so again, a couple words I like here, comprehensive, complementary, right, between some of these different settings. Again, to your point, you can't really have having one turned on without some of these other ones doesn't quite make sense because you're only covering half of the equation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the defense in depth we talk about. And I love that you brought up phishing because that's one thing, I bring up phishing in a lot of my conversations because everyone's like, okay, the only place to secure and defend against a phish is at the email. And the answer to that is absolutely not. That's short-minded thinking because if everyone in the world today, which they do, they already accept they accept breach. I'll say the B word, right? They accept breach. That's just what they think. That's how they act. That's how they work, right? If you're already accepting breach, you better do the steps to mitigate the risk of a phish being going, right? So this is saying, hey, I clicked on it and now the executable tried, but now I need to be explicitly, I need to fall forward a second time, right? I need to allow that layer to also get bypassed, right? Because that phish will come in. You can't stop all of them, right? And now you need to make sure the blast radius is minimized.
I think protecting against phishing attacks, which are just as prominent as ever,
Sure.
if not more. And now there's several iterations of what that looks like. And don't even get me started on deep fakes and everything else.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we'll leave
There's
that.
plenty of time. I mean, the OS of Windows, and I think they're building in AI to the OS. So there's going to be more CIS benchmarks to disable. Yeah, Senteon has the work to keep up with all these new settings.
Yeah. I'm sure you and CIS can come together on a thou shall not take a blood sample from me too. Yeah. So no, I think protecting against a phishing attack, a lot goes into that. It's training your people, rewarding your people for identifying them, giving
I like
them
that.
the pathways and the mechanisms to report and be transparent, right? Like, there's nothing more commendable to me than when someone has, believe that, hey, I may have been compromised. I may have done something I know I shouldn't have. Here's exactly what I did. They open up, the everything and just lay it out on the table and say, yep, let's try to figure this out. And same goes for companies when they're compromised as well. Here's what happened. Here's what we did. And here's how we, are remediating it, doing better going forward. But phishing, yeah, I mean, again, it's not going anywhere. Nope. It's just going to be, especially with AI, it's just going to get more sophisticated. Maybe they'll actually spell words right now. I don't know. Now that a machine's
words in images, no. But that brings up man, I had a really good segue because you said something. Oh, the privacy aspect. A lot of these CIS benchmarks, maybe they don't enhance security, but the privacy side, they're hiding some of that identifiable information, right? If a privacy setting is loose and a bad actor gets access to a just privacy setting, they can now tailor that phish to be more explicit, spear phishing, as they call it, right? It's going to be more like, oh, this can't be fake. That's, wow, you know exactly where I am. Like that's the real Starbucks around the corner from me. I'm going to click that link for a free coffee, right? So these settings, again, are about not just security, but about your privacy and making sure those phish are generic as possible, aren't confusing, and making sure there's a limited blast radius if the worst happens.
Absolutely.
All right, I think we got 2 more settings, maybe 3. All right, let's get going here. So prevent bypassing Microsoft Defender SmartScreen prompts for sites is set to enabled. So if Microsoft, says don't go here, this is saying you can't even allow them to go there anyway. This is going to be a complete block. You cannot move any further. You can't tear down this wall. You're done, right? So this would probably trigger an employee who's frustrated to submit a ticket. But hey, now you just brought security culture to the enterprise, to the MSP, that now they can't go. They submit a ticket, and that's what you want, right? You'd rather them submit a ticket than them bypass it and have the B word and then retroactively deal with it. So, I mean, why are these messages so important? Why don't we want our employees just to bypass them?
I mean, and what's important is if you're going to, and I recommend to, mandate XYZ security controls, right? Have things in place. Don't allow users to run free, bypass things. Don't allow them to, not reset their password after whatever the rule says you're supposed to after amount of time, whatever the case may be. But on that point, make sure you have a very, easy to follow step-by-step guide process. Make sure that they're trained and understand and have easy access to support for, going through those channels like you said. And I had another point I wanted to bring up. I guess from my own personal experience here at LastPass, I mean, I can't tell you how locked down it is here. I mean, everything is done from a tiny little brick here that I mean, we can't use Box, we can't use Google Drive. My computer upload speed is like .00001 megabits per
Does
second.
all the scans, all the checks. It
I
does the things it has to.
even beyond what we had at CIS, which was also, as you can imagine, incredibly robust, takes 30 minutes to log in. So if you have a 9 a.m. meeting, you better be up with your coffee at 8:15,
We've
right?
heard Rich complain about that still.
You know, and but what I will tell you is that from my experience at both of those organizations, at CIS and here at LastPass, having the people and the processes and procedures behind, like, not only explaining why these are in place and communicating when they're being put into effect and all those different things, like, you need to have empathy for the end user. But at the same point in time, you have to have these things mandated in place. You have to be able to drive adoption to certain tools that
Yes.
create that secure layer. What does Tony Stark and Iron Man say, or in Avengers say, right? Putting a suit of armor around the world. That's what you have to do with your organization, right?
Yep.
So
And I think the word choice, I think the word choice was fabulous. The one word I wish you would have said is evangelize, right? As MSPs, we have to evangelize the technology to the end clients. And as enterprises, right, the employees of the enterprise, they don't know any of these security tech. So it's up to us security professionals, us vendors, right? We need to evangelize what we do to you so that you're empowered to evangelize ongoing. Because without the commitment and the buy-in from leadership, let alone leadership, you need the buy-in of the whole company. If you don't have buy-in, no one's going to do it.
my favorite MSPs are the ones who do this really well, right? Who are able to evangelize the what, the why, the how. Although the end user might not really care about the how, right?
Right.
Um,
How in depth do you go? Yep.
Right. But being able to put those things in place to create a good experience, it drives a lot of credibility at the end of the day. I mean, think of physical security tools that are in place, right? Like when I drop my
Yep.
daughter off at preschool, they have signs and cameras and badge scanning things everywhere, and say, don't you go tailgating. And I'm the guy who doesn't hold the door open for anybody, and people give me the sideways looks, right?
I'm following policy.
I'm sorry, but these things are in place for that reason, and it's like you need to just make it real for them. So I've seen MSPs who have awesome security awareness training programs, and they build some of those we'll call them virtual gates into that training, saying the why, and then kind of how it affects you, and this is why we're doing it, because this could happen and this is how it could affect you.
Yep.
So
And bringing up physical security is so good. I'm going to give a shout out to I can't remember his name, but I know his wife's name's Tara Wheeler of Red Queen Dynamics. I'll give her a shout out, but I am referring to her husband. But her husband does physical security layers, and he gave a presentation at MSP GeekCon this last year, and he said one of the funniest stories, or one of the most interesting, maybe funny is not the right word, is an enterprise hired him. Right, he goes in and he tries to break their physical security. Right, that's what he's hired to do. And one of the times he was able to get a badge, the badge didn't have access to the server room, which he was trying to get to. So good, right? The badges didn't have universal access, but it was his job to get into this room. And he showed up the next day in a construction vest,
carrying
walked
a ladder.
right in, carrying a whole toolkit of drills, whatever, hammers. And he actually took off the doorknob of a locked door without opening it. And when he was stopped, which he was halfway through, he was stopped by real security. Real security goes, "Hey, what the hell are you doing? Like, why are you here?" And he responded confidently, "The hell does it look like I'm doing?" And the security guard, "Oh, okay." And he left. And he got into the room.
Yeah.
Physical security, just as important as cybersecurity.
This, I mean, I won't, steal the thunder of the last setting that we have to cover in the other rest of the presentation, but
Pull it
the
up. Pull up the last setting while you do the story.
yeah, the interaction of physical security and cybersecurity. I had a lot of really good conversations with folks at Black Hat. There was a CISO who works for a casino, and right, and
Yep.
we had fun conversations talking about the similarities between a voting machine and a slot machine, right? But the relationship between physical and cybersecurity is so underrated,
Yes.
and companies that get that and are able to facilitate that connection, and then tie in, whether it's event logs or other things, or like that
Yep.
sharing of data and information to enhance both and complementing each other. I mean,
Yep.
that's
And that's what you're doing when you're ingesting some of the LastPass to Defender, right? And to take that a step further, you're talking about logs and maybe SIMs and log aggregators. There's been onboardings where Senteon goes through its telemetry, goes through its learning mode, and we're saying, hey, on these servers and these workstations, all of your audit policies are set to no auditing. Do you know why? It's like, no, our SIM's still presenting stuff. Like our SIM's still showing things. It's like, yeah, it is. But what if you could give it more, right? These audit policies sound, I mean, they don't sound silly. I mean, you think it's already doing the thing because when you install a SIM, the SIM doesn't have the ability to make sure your settings are the correct state. You need a Senteon, you need the manual effort, right? But having a SIM is great. Having the settings turned on so the SIM can perform to the level it needs to, that's what matters.
again, understanding your own risk posture and understanding
Your own security stack. You're understanding the own tools you use.
what complements each other and what data do you need and how does it need. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yep. All right, the last setting for today, we got prevent bypassing of Microsoft Defender SmartScreen warnings about download. So a little different than the previous setting where we're talking about prompts for sites. This is now saying, hey, the executable was clicked on. Now we need to prevent it from happening, right? So clicked on doesn't necessarily mean executed. And this is Microsoft Defender's last effort to say, no, this is bad, right? So that's kind of, I don't know if there's more to say on this one. We kind of beat it in, but anything you want to add to this one?
I mean, this is just one of those things that kind of goes into the psychology of it all, right? It's like that user, maybe that was the last little prompt they needed to say, you know what, I'm going to think before I click. I remember when I used to work at a a security services organization, and we used to hand out little knights, and we would set them on people's desks, and it's like, all right, security, okay, is going to be your reminder to think twice before you click or download or share XYZ information with someone who is not your CFO or your CEO. No, they don't need that gift card, right? So,
Yep.
yeah.
Spot on. So that is all the settings for today. Let's pull up the MITRE ATT&CK technique slide. I know this is one that excited you because, and we talked about this throughout our explanations with the settings, right? But one thing that's not always well understood is how do these settings actually mitigate my attack risk? What attacks have a less chance of being successful by these settings? Because these CIS benchmarks, having LastPass, these are extreme left of boom. These are preventative security platforms. Senteon is preventative. You always hear proactive and reactive. I like preventative more than proactive. Like it's proactive to install an EDR, but an EDR is reactive. You know what's really proactive and preventative? Us two, right? We're the preventative, proactive ones. Anyway, that's my own rant. Tell us about why are CIS benchmarks so important? Why are these attacks actually mitigated by these in place?
This some of this, like network sniffing, right? That takes me back to my days of learning how to use Wireshark and some of those other tools back at Rochester Institute of Technology. But I mean, again, I think CIS does a really good job of identifying and helping you figure out how to put things in place to stop like the most basic of attacks, man in the middle attacks, getting your credentials leaked and taken. Where I see LastPass and coming in is around things like encryption and MFA, and like when you are sharing passwords, you're doing it through a very secure channel. Like with us, for example, you can only share LastPass credentials within the LastPass ecosystem. You can't share them with someone else who's got, a different password manager or whatever.
Those secrets stay internal, and that secrets are only known by the secret holders. And right,
exactly. So again, this is CIS's bread and butter, and in terms of saying, yep, like here are the different techniques and the attack vectors, and here's what's out in the wild. I mean, go on their website, right, with all the CVE bulletins they have and everything else. They stay right on top of it, and they are constantly proactively going after that community that they manage, saying, hey, I mean, these are the folks who are true security practitioners out there, understanding, hey, yeah, here's how they're getting in, here's what they're doing, here's what they're exploiting. What do we have to turn on and off? What do we have to put in place to make that much harder? So yeah,
that's so good, and to hear, and again, someone from CIS say, like, yes, we work with the red team, right? We work with the attackers. We understand how the attack works, and then we identify which settings can make that work less, or which settings can make that more hard, right? So it's cool to hear your perspective, being literally previously at CIS, but also relating your experience there to LastPass today. So thanks for that. Thanks for that overview there.
Of course.
Now we got 1 minute left where we got kind of this conclusion slide. I do this slide every week, but you know, an MSP looking to do hardening for the first time, maybe they have no background in it, they've never changed a config, right? And maybe they've never had a password manager, right? Why should an MSP maybe prioritize this a little higher than it is, right? I know MSPs are busy, right? And if you're break fix, maybe security's out of scope. But if you are an MSSP or an MSP who does security, what would you say to them about prioritizing hardening and password management?
So one thing I know from talking to MSPs, and again, I worked for a service provider in the past, and we partnered with a lot of MSPs who didn't do security, but were very interested in winning that business and earning that business from customers. These are table stakes things that you need to be able to do. These are going to be items that you can implement with a customer that's going to drive a lot of credibility from your end. I know Senteon is the same way as LastPass, where you've got dedicated modules in your program for MSPs to have that administrative control. LastPass does the same. Our product is literally built for MSPs, as is yours.
Awesome.
So again, it's going to be easier for you to implement and manage as an MSP, and it's going to really build that credibility for your customer, saying, yes, I am getting into table stakes security. These are measures that you need to be taking. I am aligning with frameworks and best practices and recommendations from CIS, who's awesome.
Defensibility,
others, right? So it's because CIS, and they all map to each other really well. Another great thing CIS does better than most is the mapping.
A lot better than most.
We'll just say they're the best at it. So yeah, I think if you're looking to really break into a security offering as an MSP, hardening configuration, password management, security and awareness training, all the things that you'll have no trouble finding resources from at CIS and from us too. That's where you need to start.
That's awesome to hear. It is more than just the security value, right? This is driving security culture. This is making sure users can't get to areas they shouldn't, making sure that the phishing, if clicked, isn't executed, right? It's all this left of boom, preventative, and that was a really good summary on why you should prioritize it. Now we're already 2 minutes over, but I love to give each guest, hey, is there any concluding thoughts before I wrap up the show? Is there anything else you want to leave with? You already did a great one with this slide, but is there anything else you want to add in the last minute?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say on this point too for MSPs is operational efficiency, right? Like having products that are not only making your clients more secure, saving you from wrench turning, right? Like saving you from being at your help desk 24/7, doing 1,000 password resets. We would love to, have you not have to do those as much anymore, right? So again, it's a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, having just the right amount of security in place that's perfect for that organization or for that customer is going to create operational efficiencies and hopefully a better user experience if you've built it consciously thinking about the user experience.
That is well done. And it sounds like LastPass did consider the user experience in building the platform. So kudos to you on thinking about the whole journey.
Absolutely. If there's one thing I'll say about LastPass is we are definitely, and this isn't from me because I've only been here for a few months. This is things, the amount of research I've done talking to, partners and customers, customer-facing teams alike. We're the most user-friendly, support-friendly password manager on the market.
That is awesome to hear. All right, let's pull up this wrap-up slide here. So kudos to LastPass, what you're doing with the community. This is awesome to hear. And I know we already talked about some additional follow-up webinars, diving deeper into the partnership of Senteon and LastPass, right? How we might be able to do those integrations and increase the efficacy of each other's solutions, right? This has been really great. Love the direction you guys are going. So again, huge shout out on LastPass and what you're doing. We got some free offerings here. All of these videos are captured on our YouTube channel over at Senteon. LastPass was nice enough to offer their 14-day trial via the webinar, so feel free to check that out. And if you are looking to check out Senteon, we do have a freemium as well as 100 free assessments that I'm happy to onboard, internal, external, all completely free for watching the webinar. And tomorrow we got Kevin Ducktwitz. He'll have to tell me how to say it tomorrow, but the brutal reality of starting a tech company. And then we're going straight back into some more of these CIS benchmarks with James Beerley and Bill Campbell. One thing I don't have on there as well is next week I will be doing a hardening webinar with Ninja One. So that'll be another joint vendor kind of discussion on why hardening matters and the challenges. So really looking forward to really just the initiative of the vendors, right? Vendors are stepping up. We're wanting to work together and we're wanting to communicate. And LastPass and Senteon and obviously Ninja and other friends like Cyrisma, like we're all doing things together to make things more uniform, more integrated, and easier for our partners. Thank you, Ray. Awesome guest. Looking forward to the next episode.
Yeah, appreciate it as always, and keep up